This is the XP Pen Artist 16 2nd Gen. It's their new display tablet that's designed to fit in that nice budget range, and today we're going to be checking it out. Hello, my name is Brad, and I review tech for creative professionals, and this is XP Pen's budget-priced 16-inch display tablet. They make a Pro version of this display and a Super Pro variant as well. They call that the Artist Pro TP. Now that one's really special because it's got a 4K display and also a touchscreen. But there's not a ton of difference between what they've just released here and their Pro display that they released last year. The Pro does have a little wheel along the side, not just buttons like this one does. And if you look at the screen, the color gambits are a little bit better on the Pro display, but for most people just looking at this side by side, it's going to be hard to tell the difference. Now that TP version, of course, has some of those great quality of life improvements, but it's going to cost you a lot more. In fact, it's going to be about twice as much, more than twice as much as this display here. Now, before we jump in, I want to tell you about the best daily newsletter and today's sponsor, Morning Brew. I used to start my day by aimlessly scrolling through social media, and I would see people reacting to the news that had happened overnight, but in my bleary-eyed state, I was left wondering, what just happened? Morning Brew answers those questions, a concise daily email where I can find out what happened in the world, and it's completely free. Traditional news is dry and boring, and with Morning Brew, I'm up to date on tech and business and finance in 5 minutes. And the whole thing is written in this witty, irreverent, and informative style. Just this week, I learned why Coca-Cola is rolling out new twist-off caps that stay attached to the bottles. Also, how Conan O'Brien sold his podcasting company for $150 million. And I even read a fun little comic. Yeah, I still love a good comic. It's totally free and it only takes 15 seconds to sign up. Go to morningbrew.com/BradColbo or click on the link down below in the description. You'll not only get a free newsletter, you're going to get a newsletter you actually read and enjoy. So what are the main specs on this tablet? Well, this is a pen display. So what it has is a screen, and that screen extends or mirrors your computer laptop screen. You can also use this with a desktop computer, but what's important to know is it needs to be connected to a computer of some sort to work. It's not going to work on its own. It will work on any Mac or Windows computer and some Android devices. If you do go the Android route, be kind of careful because you are going to lose some functionality. I think the Android features here are cool and nice to have. However, I wouldn't necessarily get something like this specifically to work on an Android tablet or phone. The display that we have here is full HD. That's 1920 pixels by 1080 pixels. It is a 16-inch display. It looks pretty good. When you get it to that size, you are going to see some pixels, especially because of the way you use a drawing tablet. You're usually hovering over it. You're pretty close to it. It's not going to look as crisp as maybe your phone screen does. Same thing with the colors. They look good. They're not great. They're not amazing, but they get the job done. This has a 90% NTSC color gambit and also a 1000:1 contrast ratio. There is a matte texture on the screen. That's something that pretty much every drawing tablet you're going to find these days has. That is going to dull your colors and dull your contrast just a tiny bit, but it's going to give you a far better surface to draw on, a far better feeling surface to draw on because it has a little more grip for the pen. Also, since this is designed to sit flat or at a slight degree on your desk, it is nice to have that matte display on it because it's going to really cut down on the amount of glare from any kind of overhead lights. In the box, you have exactly what you expect. You have the cables to hook this up, you have a pen, you're also going to get a cleaning cloth, and you guessed it, a drawing glove. Now, this does not come with any kind of stand or feet or any way to prop it up, at least not in the box. So that's something you're probably going to want to invest in if you don't have something to prop it up on already. It's just going to be more comfortable if you can get it up even at just a slight angle, and long term, your neck is going to thank you. How do you hook this thing up to your computer? Well, there's a couple different ways. You can use just one cable, a USB Type-C cable, and that's it. You don't need any additional power or anything like that. However, that cable doesn't come in the box. It does come with a different cable, one of those 3-in-1 cables. One side goes into the tablet, the other side has an HDMI, it has a standard USB Type-A and a second USB Type-A. That second USB Type-A ends up getting plugged into a power brick. It also comes with that and an extension cord because this needs to be plugged into a wall to pull enough power to work properly. Now, that included pen uses XP Pen's new X3 pen technology. This has been shipping with all their products for the better part of a year now, so I should probably stop calling it new. The pen is not exactly my favorite. I have some quibbles with it. It does some things well. It does some other things that I wish it did better. but more on that in a minute when we get to the drawing section. The pen itself does have a really good initial activation rate and has 8,128 levels of pressure sensitivity, plus 60 degrees of tilt. Now this bottle comes in 4 different colors. I wanted to get the blue. I thought that looked kind of cool. You can also find it in pink and in green. Now when I went to order this on their website within the first few days that it was available, I wasn't able to get any of the colors. I don't think they were quite there yet. They weren't ready to ship them. I ended up going with the classic gray. It looks fine. The back is a really dark gray. The front is black. It's got some lighter gray buttons. It's a nice classic look. I did check out their website while I was working on this review, and it looks like all 4 of those colors are now available. The colors have this two-tone thing going on. If you look at the pictures, you can see that the back is going to be a little bit darker than the buttons on the front, but all of them have that black front to kind of complement those buttons. Now, the build quality of the tablet it's pretty good considering how inexpensive it is. It's all plastic, so it's not like super premium feeling, but it's solid for the price. It does not feel cheap. And at 12 millimeters, it's also pretty thin. The other thing you're going to notice as soon as you pull this out of the box is there are a ton of shortcut keys on this thing. 10 of them. That's a good thing. Although I am getting used to how many keys we have here. In some of XP Pen's devices, you will have like a little spinning wheel or something like that. What that ends up doing is it breaks up those keys into 2 chunks, so it's easier to just use them without looking. Something I'm still getting used to here after using it for a few days is hitting the correct key. I usually get the first few okay, but once I get into the middle, I'm always pressing the wrong one. I'm accidentally increasing my brush size instead of decreasing it, or little things like that. Now, to differentiate these keys, some of them have little dots on them. They look like Braille, but they aren't real Braille. Either way, it's a lot of keys. It's a good thing, but also something that will take some time to familiarize yourself with. Side note, I recently updated my website where I rank my favorite drawing tablets over there. If you're trying to figure out, hey, what is a good starting point where I want to start comparing and contrasting these devices, that's a good place to go. Okay, so why don't we jump in here and we can test out this pen. And immediately off the bat, as I expected, the pressure looks pretty good here. As I press very lightly, I get light lines. As I apply more pressure, I get darker lines. Everything looks good. Let me zoom in here a little bit and show you what I'm seeing, because one of the negatives of this pen that I've seen in several of XP pens lately is you just get a little bit of wiggle. So let me drag my hand across the canvas here, and you can see a little bit of mechanical wave. Now, some of it is my hand, right? Down here, I can see, oh, my hand was moving a little bit. But once I get the line going, what we're starting to see is this mechanical wave, which is a little bit different. Mechanical wave is a little bit more uniform, and where you don't want to see it is on things like the outside of the stroke. You saw the speed that I was moving as I was going across this, and this is still adding, you know, a little bit of wave to it. And I see it up here, and I see it on some of the other curves here and there. And that is something that unfortunately this pen does do. Now, one way to get rid of that, get my canvas moved over here a little bit, is to go up here in Photoshop or whatever drawing app you're using and turn on some smoothing just to knock that out. And now when I draw my lines, I'm gonna get some really nice smooth lines in there. So it is, you are able to get rid of that feel. And you can see now when I'm doing that, I'm getting these really beautiful arcing lines. The downside of it is as I draw, you're going to see more lag on that line because it is thinking a little bit as it draws. That makes it a little bit harder to go in here and do things like complete circles. Like, okay, where is that going to end? And the more of that smoothing that you have on, the harder it is to kind of figure out where those endpoints on those lines are. There are other things that this pen does well. For example, the initial activation rate is really good. If I draw really light, I get really light lines. If I apply more pressure, I get those better pressure lines. And it's very easy to hold that pressure around curves. Like you can see with these circles, sometimes when you go around curves, you might see like at the bottom, if you apply just a tiny bit more pressure, it'll start to like blow out a little bit, but it's very easy to keep that pressure consistent as you're drawing. I'm gonna turn off the smoothing here for a second, because the other thing I like to take a look at are just some of my, quick drawing lines that I like to throw in there, because I'm always looking, at the end of my lines. Do these come to nice points? They trail a tiny bit at the end, but overall I don't think it's that bad. Sometimes you'll see some weird shoestringing effects that'll happen at the end of lines. That's the main thing that I'm taking a look for, and I don't see that happening here. So overall, I think this is a really solid pen. Probably not my first choice, because for my specific kind of drawing, this pen does have a little too much wobble to it. I put a lot of emphasis in my work on those smooth lines, and so I'm going to look for something smoother. If you don't, I think this is going to work really well for you. All right, so in conclusion, what do I think? For the price, I think this is a really good product. It retails for about $400. I was able to pick up mine from XP Pen site on sale for $340. At that price, I think it's really good. There are some trade-offs here with the display. Obviously, it's only full HD. That keeps the price down, obviously, but you are going to find better quality tablets out there if you have more money to spend. Of course, the biggest negative to me is what I mentioned before, which is obviously the pen and the wobbliness there. They've made a trade-off where they've improved that initial activation rate, but I don't like the pen quite as much. And for me, when I look at Wacom or Huion, Wacom's more expensive, even though it's going to give you a much better line. Huion gives you, basically the same stuff in the same price range, but I think the line is a little bit better. Actually, I know the line is a little bit better. So for me, because of my art style, I tend to lean towards Huion products more than XP pen products in this particular generation. But overall, I do think this is a nice upgrade and a nice fit into XP Pen's line. But what do you think? Let me know down below in the description. Thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you in a couple of days.